So here is the output of the saved histogram from the previous video. I think it looks kind of nice. I always like to say, hey, try to tell a story with your color. Try to make roads there. Okay. And then this is what also the pair plot looked like. You can see what it shows are histograms on the diagonals, and it shows scatter plots, some interesting scatter plots here on the, when the columns are not the same. And so what I want to do now is look at how to show plots between two dimensions. And I want to do this with a purpose. So this data set, when you're looking at two dimensions and you want to compare like one column to another, what are you trying to predict here? Okay, so this is a continuity from the previous lesson. We're using the same notebook. You're using here, like you want to think about what's interesting to predict. Well, I mentioned before, okay, it's helpful to be able to predict the bike rentals, right? The number of rentals given other information. And so let's see how it's influenced by things like temperature, or the day of the week. And one way to do that is through a scatter plot. So we're going to visualize some scatter plots now. And we'll come down here. And by the way, in Colab, you can make like a nice little text header. So this will be like, it's visualizing two parts, 2D visualization. And of course, if you're going to do that, right, you got to put one at the top. You got to put a 1D visualization up here as well. I think this is nice to be able to organize your notebooks for future reference and these hashtags. 1D visualization. I'll show you what they do. Get it in there, press Shift Enter to sort of run it to get rid of the left side. And you can see now you can press this arrow. How cool is that? And you can go straight now to 2D visualizations. Okay, so scatter plot, right? And so I'm going to actually use the Seaborn scatter plots. I commonly do. So that's SNS. We did it in SNS dot scatter plot. There it is. It's just scatter note, scatter plot. And then Seaborn does it a little differently. Like they say, like, do you see where it says data any? There's some different ways you can do it. And so let's just try it like this. We'll say DF, that's our data. I don't think we have to say data equals DF. And then if we pick our X value, well, you may even forget the columns at this point, right? So different ways you can get it. You could just look at the data frame again, df.head. And you can say, okay, yeah, let's see how does temperature affect the count. And so we would try temp here and count. Now this might not quite work as is. I just want to give it a shot though. Yeah, so I think we do want to say like data equals df. And then we may need to put the df in there too. Let's see if we do or don't. That looks like we do. I think what you actually want is x equals and y equals. Okay, just trying some things out. It's always useful to try things. And there we have now the scatter plot. Okay, so this is sort of interesting, right? Scatter plots you can do a lot with. And first of all, you want to analyze it a little bit, like what's the pattern? Well, the pattern here makes sense, right? There's a positive correlation. This shows that as the temperature goes up, the number of bike rentals goes up, right? On average, right? When it's like warmer out, more people are going to ride bikes. And you do see what you might expect here at the top, right? It looks like it's pretty steady in the middle, but at the top, it starts to go down because if it's too hot, right, you're not getting a ton of bike rentals. People maybe want to stay inside. Okay, so in itself, it's very useful. But you can enhance Seaborn scatter plots. I really think it's cool. And so you can have something called hue. And what hue is going to do is it's going to change colors based on another column. So you're actually picking a column here. And if you look at the columns, well, we see how temperature influences it. Well, what about another column? Like, what about the day of the week? Okay, that seems like that should influence it. let's try that. So if we put in hue weekday, okay, let's see what happens. Okay, so I'll press Shift Enter just from that one change. And now you can see it's got more information. It's showing us the number of bike rentals based on the day of the week. Okay, now it's a little kind of messy. I think the coloring's weird. And I think we want to change this color. So I want to look at how do we change the color? Well, first of all, matplotlib colors, right? You can just put in matplotlib colors. I use this a lot. And if you scroll down, you know, I mean, yes, like you can just use B for blue, G, you know, you can use these shorthands. I usually use these, like these are more than enough to sort of like get, you know, the variations that you're looking for. So I tend to pick these when I'm looking at individual colors. Okay. But we're actually looking for hues, and that's something a little bit different. And so for hues, I can tell you, probably have to search it online. It looks like it's not just in the straight colors. But if we go back to our code here, it's actually the palette. And so you can search the palette, and let me put these together here. You can press return inside of these functional parentheses. And so for the palette, for instance, you could try something like blues. I know works. I think it does. So let's see the difference. Okay, you can see it's showing like variation of the color blue now. And so it's sort of more consistent. This one's a little strange because the 0 and 6 are sort of like close because I think, you know, well, I guess we're not sure whether 0 is Sunday or Monday. Whereas the middle days are kind of closer together. So you can certainly look up different color palettes. But what I want to do is actually, let's change the size too. And so you can change the size. And the size is based on yet another factor. Okay, so what's the factor that we want to vary the size by? Well, I may switch the seasons with seasons. Let's throw in something like wind speed. Okay, how about wind speed and season? What I'm suggesting is let's move beyond weekday and go with season. Okay, and now let's go with wind speed. Okay, and so now I press Shift Enter, see what we get. Okay, you can see now there's something interesting happening. First of all, the seasons correlate well with the temperature. You clearly, right? It's warmer and warmer seasons. And then the sizes, you know, you kind of can't see the variation that much in the different wind speeds. And so what you can do is, I think it's sizes here. It's a tuple, and you can put in something like, you know, the smaller might be, I don't know, let's just try something like 10 to maybe 20 to 200. We want to see more variation. So now if you press Shift Enter, okay, we're getting like a lot more info in this. I think it's maybe a little, I feel like we could use kind of more smaller ones. I think the larger ones are actually maybe a little large. So I'm going to modify it to 10 and 150. Try that. Yeah, it's okay. And I think, you know, something else, we can change the figure size here. And so plt.figure, it's a little jammed in here, fig size. So basically what I'm going for here is sort of the information and the aesthetics, like how can we make this look a little nicer? Well, let's try that 12 by 7 again. And you can see now it looks better because it's more spread apart, right? I actually think it looks kind of clean. And the coloring now is very meaningful because it's clear that it's different seasons, right? And it's fascinating, right, to look at this. And the wind speed, right, we don't gather a whole lot of information from the different sizes. You could even make it bigger to try to, now that it's spread apart. I kind of like it as is, but if you make it a little bigger, you know, you can see better. Windy days are bigger circles, and they are maybe a little bit more toward the bottom. You know, hard to gauge exactly. But that's sort of like a cool way that you can show your scatter plots. And the nice thing with Seaborn is note that Seaborn puts this legend in for you. Okay, so that's really cool. Now, how else can we look at the representation of this data? Well, you can also get the correlation itself. So let's try df. We're looking at the count, right? And we want to see what's the correlation between the count and the temperature. So it's .cor, that's short for correlation, classic Pearson correlation with the column temp. Okay, so if we press Shift Enter now, we can see it's somewhat significant, right? You know, when you're working with real data, like it's hard to get high correlations. A lot of them are low. Okay, so this is showing us that the correlation is like almost like 63. Okay, 1.0 would be a perfectly straight line and 0 would be no relationship whatsoever. So definitely like temperature influences the count, right? That makes sense. Well, what about a regression line, a line of least fit? How would we get that? Well, it's SNS, let's see, is it reg plot? Yeah. And let's just put in our column, which is, well, actually it should be 2, right? Let's do this again. So it should be data equals df, then we'll get x equals temp. Generally, like if you're trying to predict something, that should be your y, and y equals count. Okay, and so let's take a look at the regression plot that we get here. And what it shows is the line of least fit. And you can show, I got to make it bigger to make it look better. It's more fun to analyze. plt.figure, recall that, and then inside you change the fig size. I kind of like this 12:7 on the size that I'm showing you everything. Okay, so let's do that again. And you know, you could just change the color of like all the dots. And so, you know, that's where you can use those sort of individual colors right up here. If I go and just have fun with it and say, okay, I just want to make something maybe that looks nice. Maybe I want like, you know, dark violet, for instance. I can go back and try it out, right? Dark violet. So press Shift Enter, and you can see a nice looking plot here. And this sort of like, this is the uncertainty. And so it's not a lot. And so this is the correlation line. Sorry, this is the regression line that is given. And really, like, there are ways to get the actual equation, though it's not easy, unfortunately, using pandas. And this is the first step toward really predicting data, right? It's looking at using sort of classical mathematical methods like a linear regression line. And we can see it does a reasonably good job, but it's not going to do better than that. It seems like if we have more information, we can, in fact, do better. And machine learning is what we will use to go beyond regression and look at how we can use all of the columns to help predict, in this case, the bike rentals, in your case, whatever column of data you're trying to predict.